good afternoon, or good evening, dependent, of course, on when and where you are joining us from. This is the EPN podcast, a podcast that has been designed to demystify the sales profession and remove some of the stigma that has been associated. Now, we're looking to do that by chatting with various sales leaders, salespeople, to sort of lift the curtain a little bit on their journey, what made them get into sales, and what actually kept them in sales when those hard days inevitably did arrive. Now, I am joined by Jordan Ford today. Great name, by the way. Got to say it, a bit cliche, but hey ho. Who is the UK SDR manager for Employment Hero. Now, Jordan started out in recruitment, I believe, before making the switch to sales. So keen to find out a little bit more about that later on. But do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit more about you?
Yeah, cheers, Jordan. Yeah, so hi everyone that's listening. I'm Jordan, UK SDR manager at Employment Hero. Been with Employment Hero for 2.5 years now, so starting to become a bit of the furniture. I started out as an SDR and then moved up into senior and SDR team lead, now manager. So yeah, been through the full cycle from SDR to management. So yeah, really keen to get stuck into some of the questions. Hopefully people might find a bit of insight to what I have to say, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Nice. Speaking of furniture, lovely sofa bed in the background in the new flat. Got to say it. Good stuff. So what was it that intrigued you about a career in sales?
Do you know what? With full honesty and transparency, I kind of fell into sales. So when I was a bit younger, it doesn't look like it now, but I used to play a bit of football for like a little academy down the road from where I am. And I was working part-time at Waitrose, and my mum was like, well, you need to get a full-time job. So applied to a few different things. And one of them was a recruitment company locally to me. Went for an interview, got the interview, and then kind of started in recruitment like that, really. So I was never pushed into sales or anything like that. I kind of just fell into it. There wasn't me wanting to move into sales. It was kind of fell into it. And then from there, it kind of has progressed to where I am now. But I'm sure we'll cover all of that. But yeah, it was just sort of fell into it, really.
Indeed. It's the most common answer I get. To be fair, when I ask that question, it's a lot of people that fall into it and then fall in love with it, and stick around even when you get those real tough days. Now, talking of tough days, imagine there's been a fair few that you've experienced. What was it that helped you to overcome those tough days? And did you have a North Star that you were aiming for?
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of how I overcome it, right? I in this role at the moment, anyway, I have exposure to probably some of the most intelligent people in the industry that I can lean on. But it was slightly different. When you first get into sales, you see every other rep on the floor doing well, and you're not doing so well, and you've got massive imposter syndrome. But I guess for me, it's just communication. Like, if I don't understand something, you kind of don't know what you don't know, right? So it's just really utilizing the people that you've got around you, especially so early on in your sales career, using the tools that you've got. But most importantly, if you don't understand something, just asking someone. And I think that's something that I've utilized through my career so far is, if I don't understand something, just say. There shouldn't be a stigma against asking any sort of question. I always say to any sort of new member that comes into my team, I know it's cliche, but no question is a silly question, and I truly stand by that. So for me, it's just more about utilizing the people that you've got near you when you are having them tough days, and using people to either run or get something on your chest or get something off your chest. Sorry. And I guess through my career, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's it is cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's so true. I know, and still to this day, pride gets in my way. I'm like, I can do it myself, but there's no problem, there's no challenge that hasn't been faced by someone in the team within your network. So the best thing to do is turn and ask for help.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, in terms of your career, you've progressed from that frontline to now frontline management. Obviously, sales development more specifically is the frontline for any business, and it's a fantastic thing because we get instant feedback from the market. But equally, we often most harshly feel those changes in the market, shifts in buyer behaviours. Have you got any best practices that you picked up from your time as an SDR, or things that you encourage within your team to ensure that they can stay adaptable and continually strive for success during those periods of drastic change?
Yeah, and I think, look, that there's always changes in every single market, right? We specifically focus around HR and payroll. And for me, it's just driving honesty with your prospects. So the way that you can read all the articles in the world, right? You can go online, what's happening in the market, what's happening in the HR space, but actually hearing it from the horse's mouth in terms of HR managers, HR directors, payroll managers, that's where you're going to get the juicy insights into what's going on in the market. And the way to do that is forming meaningful relationships, right, with people in the industry. And you from that, you're just continuously learning off the managers and the directors that are working in that industry on the day-to-day and are seeing them changes on the day-to-day. So for me, it's all just it's just about like rapport building and driving honesty with your prospects. And if you don't understand something, people like to say they're experts in an industry, right? When they're working sales, but are you truly an expert? I don't believe you are. You can understand it, but the true experts are the ones that are doing the job on the day-to-day. So just being really honest with them and saying, hey, sorry about my naivety here. I don't really understand that, so I don't do it on the day-to-day. Like, what does that mean? What change is coming? And you'll be surprised the amount of people that actually really do like to talk about what they do in their role. And it gives you a real sort of insight into what's not working and what is working. And obviously as a sales rep, that massively helps. But for me, it's just all about that effective communication and that rapport building and just being really honest and making the conversation humanized. I hear a lot of calls, right, where it's all about the sell, it's all about the value, it's all about the feature, but it's also about being a human and being yourself on the call. And being yourself is there's a lot to it, right? Because I was watching something on LinkedIn actually this morning about, am I myself in the sales role as I am talking to my grandma? And probably not. There's probably a bit of difference. But it's just having that human aspect to being honest with someone. And if you don't understand it, try and understand it.
Yeah, it's a really great point. I think it comes down to that authenticity, right? Is that the natural instinct? Is that your natural reaction to that scenario, that situation? As you said, there's going to be differences based on the scenario, but as long as you're being authentic, then that's what really counts. And on that point of asking those people that are living and breathing it, it's so true. I think within sales development orgs, we are driven to find efficiency wherever possible. And what it can tend to sort of breed is a bit of a short-sighted approach. Now, one of the things that I tried to do and still try to do is, even those prospects that don't end up buying from me, if I've built good enough rapport, they're that little focus group. Let's say if I've spotted something new, can I use them as a sounding board? Is this happening for you as well, or is this just an industry thing over here? So as you said, if you can build those relationships, you nurture them.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I started out as an SDR on LinkedIn, I tried to form as many connections as I could in the HR space, and I managed to form a few connections with HR consultants in the space. And what I didn't utilize them for their business. I really started to form relationships with them to understand what is going on in the market, and if there was any law changes or if there was anything big coming up, obviously they knew about it. And I would ask them because I didn't know the answer. And most of the time, I'd get an answer back, and that's how you build that relationship. I'm not trying to get anything from them in terms of a sale or money or anything like that. I'm just trying to understand what is going on in the industry. And if you can form that relationship with someone like that, it's so valuable, not in terms of revenue, but in terms of what is coming up in the industry, what is changing. And that obviously helps relay it back to your team. So, I can advocate massively to trying to form relationships, not just for the sale, but actually really to understand what is going on in the industry, because it is important, right? If you don't adapt to what is going on in the industry, you are going to fall behind. And we've seen that with so many times in not just in this space, but in other spaces as well. So, adaptability again is a massive part.
Yeah, indeed. Now, in terms of that adaptability piece, so I watched a great session from SDR leaders of EMEA, which was transforming B players to A players, and there was a really great point about skill versus will. Now, I know this is something that we've chatted about offline, and I know it's something that you value as a leader. But in terms of identifying motivation, identifying purpose within your team, have you got any methods that you like to follow to try and identify something that is quite personal to that individual?
Yeah, I mean, look, we spoke about this right offline. I think the biggest thing for me, and is what helped me massively from a previous manager of mine, was really identify my why. So like, it could be like, why do I roll out of bed in the morning to do this job? And there's multiple different things that you can look at with your why, right? So you can have a short-term why, a long-term, a medium-term why, and a long-term why. Long-term why could be, a house in the south of France.
Yeah.
That's what I'm working towards. But like for me on the day-to-day, it's really identifying, why am I getting up in the morning to do this role? And for me, it's all about that growth, right? That extra 1% every day. It could be learning something new. It could be doing something outside of work, because sales gives you so much exposure to outside life as well. But one of the things I do, and I'm actually doing it this week as well with my team, is we sit down, right, and we go through your goals. So professionally, personally, financially, for that specific year, and you get it down on a Google Doc or something like that, and we revisit that month on month and where we are at against them goals. And if it's financial, we work back at what do you have to hit every month. So it could be you have to overachieve on target by 20% to save the amount you want to buy a new car or something like that. And then personal goals, that allows you to connect with the team on what they're looking to achieve personally. It could be I want to run a half marathon, I want to run a marathon. How when you have your weekly one-to-ones, how are you getting on against training? How's that going? How was your long run? I've got a guy at the moment, two guys at the moment in my team that are running marathons in the next couple of months. And I think that's, then one-to-ones have to be about the person. They have to be, what are they actually doing in their life? Build that connection. And, for me, I can really resonate with SDRs because obviously I've been there and I've done it, and it's quite recent. I've done it in the company that they're working for. And it's so important to connect on a personal level and to have honesty and transparency. And that goes both ways. I see it sometimes where leaders are like, your team shouldn't know what's going on in your life or stuff like this. And you have to be sort of a closed book. I completely disagree with that. My book is completely open with my team, and I feel like that's reciprocated as well. So I think I know I veered off a little bit there, but to really understand someone's why and how you can tap into that, it's so important. And I can't express that enough. It's so important because someone did that for me, because I didn't know what my why was. Yeah. Someone did that for me. And I'll be honest, the first 2 months of Employment Hero, 3 months actually, I've really struggled. It wasn't easy. It was I was new to tech sales, and it was hard. But then I really understood why I get up in the morning and why I do this job and what I want for me, my partner, for future family. And now I know why I get up every morning.
Indeed. I love the fact that you are an open book. I think it sets that culture that it is okay. You're leading by example. And And if your long-term goal is a house in South France, we might be neighbours in a decade or so.
Yeah. I think just to touch on that point as well, right, is that sometimes you don't know what's going on in someone's personal life. And if you don't have an open book or an open door policy, that could really affect their work life. Yeah. And if you come in and go, hey, like, you know, let's say we're halfway to target and we've got 2 days to go, like what's going on and this, that, and the other, that person might be feeling extremely overwhelmed outside of work, and you're just adding a ton of pressure onto them inside of work. That's not great. You'll see retention rates, they go further and further down. But it's just, it's really important to just, and look, people don't have to go into full detail, but as long as you're open with them, you'd hope to feel that that's reciprocated. Can't even get words out.
Reciprocated, I think you're going for. Nice. Now, it's by the sounds of things, you've had some great leaders throughout your career. I imagine there's a couple of pieces of advice that have had real impact. Are there any standouts?
Yeah, there's one standout from, but it's actually stayed with me. There's a guy called James Keane, who's our general manager globally of revenue now. He was global sales director back in a couple of years ago. And it was always assume the next role. And I was like, what are you going on about? You know, I was fresh into sales. I always assume the next role. And it's, what can I be doing that is extra on top of my role? And so I got that advice as an SDR. So it was like, what can I do that other senior SDRs are doing in the business? So at the time, we actually didn't have any in the UK because there was only 2 of us at that time. So I tapped into, you know, the Australian team and what the senior SDRs were doing over there. And I tapped in, got what they were doing, and sort of brought that back to the UK and kind of took it on myself to put in daily figures. Instead of my head of UK sales doing it, me putting in the daily figures of how the SDRs are performing, what the call volumes were, or conversion rates, or whatever it might have been, and taken that off my own back. And then when I moved into a senior role, it's like, what do the leads do in the business? What are they doing that I can put into my senior role? And it's not just about growth, and it's not just about me getting promoted. It's about how all of them bits of value that I'm taking from other people help me in an SDR role or a senior SDR role. And I just, my role just excelled, and I started to understand things a lot more. And I was learning off extremely intelligent people that were doing the role, people that were achieving in the role. And for me, like, it was that bit of advice of always assume the next role. It's not just about progression and promotion. It's about how you assume the next role helps you in your current role. And it just has stayed with me ever since. And I continue to do that now. Like, I continue to do that. I did that in the SDR team leader role, and it just stayed with me.
Yeah, it's that step on from dress for the role you want, not the one you've got. You know, it's live it, breathe it, and it sort of, I would imagine it helps to give that sort of more broad perspective, more holistic perspective, because it can get a little bit myopic, I guess, you know, in an SDR role when you're focused on your products, the pains they solve, etc. Just sort of opens your eyes to what else is out there as well. And also it's so important to utilize the leaders that you've got in the business as well. So like I say I've got a guy on my team at the moment, and he, like, you know, probably hopefully move up into an AE role in the future. And you don't have to utilize me to want to progress into the next role. How can you utilize the sales managers? How can you utilize our MD? How can you utilize people that have been there and done it, and they can give you that real advice, not just your line manager? Yeah. And I think as a culture employment here, that's something that we've built where it doesn't have to go through me or the other SDR managers to then go up to leadership. You can bypass us and get that advice from other people, because I certainly did that. You know, I utilized a lot of leaders in the business, not just, you know, my head of sales, or now my global sales development manager. Yeah. So important. And like, you got to think, right, the managers and the leaders that you got in the business, they'd probably be charging a fortune for their services for an hour or two, and you get it free. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
why not utilize it?
Yeah, no, for sure. Internal networking is just as important as external networking.
It
It's a great point. Now, in terms of personal and professional growth, you mentioned that sort of sporty background, bit of a competitive nature, I would imagine, and always assuming that next role helping to develop those skills. Are there any other habits or practices that you've picked up throughout your career in terms of growth?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me, right, because I've really struggled with this when I joined employment here, was structure. Um, I didn't know how to structure my day. It was completely new, right? It was calls and admin, and I was like, what is going on? And I just really struggled, and I couldn't get to grips with my structure, and it took me maybe 4, 5, 6 months to really identify the true structure of how I wanted to work, because everyone's different, right? So one of the things I do now is, when a new member comes into the team, it's the first thing we talk about is structure, because I know if you can get that down to a T or something that works for you, it will help you massively. And one of the ways that it helped me was really breaking up my day. And I don't just mean, right, I've done 30 calls, I'm going to do some admin, I'm going to take 10 minutes away from my desk, go and make a coffee. I took, 20 to 30 minute breaks and going out for a walk and getting some fresh air and listening to a podcast or something like that, and actually really stepping away. And I'm working with a rep in my team at the moment, and that's something that's really helping him at the moment, is going and taking himself away from this environment and going for a 30-minute walk. And actually, he's gone from making like 55 calls a day to up to near 70 to 80 calls a day. Because when you just sat there, and I know how it feels, and you're dialing, you're not taking it, it can feel long. It can feel extremely long. You come to the end of the day and like, that was a long day. And if you don't get anything booked, it can feel like an even longer day. So it's really important to identify your own structure. And that's my job as a leader, I feel, to enable that structure. And, if they need to go and take an extra break to go and have a walk, or they need to do whatever they need to do, I'm a massive advocate for that, because I have full trust in the team to do what they need to do in the time that they've got. And trust both ways is massively important, right?
Yeah, indeed. And I guess it then comes back to that communication piece. So, as long as you're able to communicate or create that environment where people feel comfortable to communicate, helps build that. Nice. I'm conscious of time. One final question. What advice would you give to anyone that's listening that either just started their career in sales, or maybe they're considering a career within the sales space?
Good question. I for anyone that's obviously in the sales space or coming into the sales space, be curious. And that is my biggest bit of advice. Be curious. Ask any question that you don't understand. It helps massively. Don't be afraid to ask any questions. Sales can be tough. You always hear it, the highs and the lows of sales. But you communicate, utilize the people that you've got around you. And if you can't utilize the people that you've got, or you don't feel like you can go to them, use your LinkedIn network. Drop me a message. I'm sure Jordan would happily appreciate a message. Any other leaders in the business? When I was a senior, I reached out to a bunch of SDR leaders and managers to try and get their advice on how you move up. Don't be afraid. Anyone, I guarantee you, anyone on LinkedIn would be more than happy to help you out. So be curious, ask questions, or drop me a message, and I'll be more than happy to set up a call or a chat.
Yeah, indeed. You'd be surprised by how helpful people actually are. There is still faith in humanity. But yeah, Jordan, that's been fantastic session. Really appreciate you joining. Best place for people to reach out? LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn. You add my LinkedIn onto this, or email, or whatever's easiest, or Slack. More than happy to have chats with people for sure.
Good stuff. Jordan, thank you again. It's been a brilliant session. And to everyone that has been listening, until next time.
Perfect. Cheers, Jordan. I really appreciate it.